and it's really a pleasure to be here, so thanks for having me. As I understand that you've had a really good day yesterday with some excellent speakers, which is great. So as Felicity said, I've been asked to talk to you today about delivering dysphagia services as a private provider, and I'm hoping to share with you some of the lessons that I've learnt and am still learning about transitioning from government services to private practice. I started my career in ADAC, which was actually DOCS at the time, then DADAC and then ADAC, and I worked across a number of different teams and positions and regions in my time. I then moved overseas and worked for the National Health Services in the UK for 4 years, and I've been working in private practice here in Sydney for the last 5 years. I manage the health services portfolio for Sal Consulting. We're based here in Sydney, and I have 2 other excellent speech pathologists on my team who are here today. We work predominantly in the disability and out-of-home care services sectors, and a large proportion of our caseload at the moment is adults with intellectual disabilities who are transitioning from large residential centres to community group homes, and at the same time are transitioning to become participants of the NDIS. So an interesting time. I understand you guys had a really excellent presentation yesterday about assessment, and I'm not going to talk too much about our assessment process, but perhaps just some of the things that we're doing at the moment, bearing in mind all of the things that were talked about yesterday. So, like I imagine most of you have experienced as well, we've had a bit of a journey with our mealtime assessment tools and how we construct assessments and continuing to learn from our experiences. And my team have worked really hard to pull together an assessment tool that integrates information from a variety of different tools and resources and textbooks, and making it really specific to the disability context and who we're working with at the moment. It's been a very collaborative process with lots of trialling and going out and seeing how the tool works and coming back and talking about it again and adding things in or changing things to what's working well and what we need to add and tweak. So just as a very broad overview, our assessment tool includes what the current concerns are, the person's likes and dislikes, the involvement of the person in mealtime planning and preparation, the environments in which they're eating and drinking, the equipment that they're using, their positioning, the assistance that they require, their alertness, and oral facial, oral motor, head and neck examination. We haven't quite worked out what we want to call it yet, and we're still talking about it and coming back to it, but we feel like it's more than just an oral motor assessment. Oral care routines, dentition, observations and assessment of eating and drinking, and observations of medication routines. We then look at post-meal observations and make our recommendations. So I'm sure there's nothing really new there, but that's what we've been doing, and like I said, continually refining it and coming back and looking at it. So I guess I've been asked to talk a bit about how we do assessment and support the implementation of mealtime management plans, and I guess the way that we see the assessment process is really an opportunity at every level to provide support that's going to assist implementation as well. So every interaction within our assessment process is about educating, it's about gathering information, and it's about supporting the implementation of what's going to come for this person. One of the things that we've integrated into our assessment process very heavily and more recently is the nutrition and swallowing risk checklist. So I've got lots and lots and lots of illustrations of why this is important and why it's been beneficial, I guess, for us to spend some time really talking to key workers and coordinators about what their thinking is behind the nutrition and swallowing checklist. So tell me about that thing that you've ticked yes to on the nutrition and swallowing checklist. So just as a couple of examples that have just happened in the last week or so is I was working with a woman whose nutrition and swallowing checklist was dated in March this year, and it's had a tick yes to the person vomits regularly. And I said, okay, well, tell me about that. And the key worker who'd actually completed the checklist in March just looked at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, but you've ticked yes that this person vomits all the time. And she said, oh no, I think that's old information. And I said, but you've just done it in March this year. And it turns out, of course, that it was just redated, and that was the process that was happening in that unit. So I think it really clearly illustrates that it gives an opportunity to then talk about what's the importance of this, where does this fit within assessment for this person, and reducing risk. And I guess if it's the primary vehicle that we're thinking about, excuse me, if it's the primary vehicle that we're thinking about to manage risk into the future, then we really need to have those discussions up front at the assessment point. So we've been getting up pretty early recently and starting to do breakfast assessments, which have been really good and really helpful. And I guess the reasons why we're finding it really good is because it gives us an opportunity to see more choices, because usually within the context that we work, and we're talking about people in large residential facilities or people who are in group homes or have just moved into group homes, that breakfast is a less structured meal, and people are more likely to have choice built into that, whereas lunch and dinner are a bit more structured and a bit more going to meal plans. So something's already been prepared for that person for the day, and there's less opportunity for choice. It's also more likely in the context that we work that breakfast is prepared on site, so we can make modifications to it as well. It's also a time when most people that live in the house are at home, and so we can see the realities of what mealtimes are like. And it gives us an opportunity to see the medication routines and make decisions around safety for that, because we keep missing that at lunchtime. Some people take medications at lunchtime, but not everyone. The other thing that it allows us to see is the oral care routines. And I think building that into our, whatever we're going to call it, head and neck examination, oral motor examination, for people especially who have difficulty following instructions, it gives us an opportunity to see something more in that field. So observing food and fluid preparation, again, is a really important part of it. So I've now started to actually just be in the kitchen and ask people before they even start preparing it, tell me about how you prepare moderately thickened fluids for so-and-so. And the responses vary quite a lot, but some of the key issues are that people are just putting a random number of scoops into the cup because that's what they've decided and that's what they've always done. We've had some recent experiences where people have replaced the scoop that come with particularly Thicken Up Clear with another scoop from a different thickening product, which is a bigger scoop, because that's more convenient. Or just using a teaspoon rather than the scoop that comes with the product, and not levelling the scoop and not stirring enough. So I'm sure you're familiar with all of the problems that come with that, but if you're actually there and have the product tin with you and talking about it, I guess then that's that point of education at the assessment level. The other thing that we do a lot of is model sitting at the table and facilitating social interactions within the mealtime. So we have a lot of situations where people in the group home, and not just necessarily the person that we're observing on that day, require supervision at mealtimes to either have prompting to slow down or to make sure that they're able to hold the cutlery or have a little bit of support around holding the cutlery in the right way to get started. But what we notice is that a lot of staff provide that support from the kitchen. So there are some people who have their back to the staff if they're sitting at the dining table. And it's taken a long time, and I don't think we're there yet, is getting a staff member to actually sit at the table to provide that supervision and support through mealtimes. Some houses are really good at it. Okay, so I haven't been paid to promote this text at all, I promise, but we've only recently got it. I don't know if anyone else has seen, or yes, some nods. I've got it here today anyway if anyone wants to have a look at it. We've found it really helpful. It's a really accessible textbook that's not like some of the ones that we had at uni. But one of the things, one of the things that we really like about this book is the mind mapping. And so we've found that a really helpful way to bring the mind map into our assessment process. It helps us to be more efficient with our reporting as well, because we've got it all there in front of us, and the thought process and the formulation around what's happening for this person just becomes really clear So I know mind mapping's not an, excuse me, not a new thing, but they do it really well in this book. So reporting. Again, this is something that we worked hard on, and I think we've still got some work to do around this in terms of improving our mealtime assessment reports, bringing everything together in a way that's accessible for people. So that fine balance between a professional report that actually indicates the level of detail that you need to, particularly in the environment that we're moving into. So we're moving into an environment where services are going to be provided by private practitioners, and so you need to come in and see somebody's file and understand why the decisions that have been made, and we need to have really clear reporting around that. And I have had situations where I've worked with people who have had assessments in the past, have been prescribed a certain texture of meal, but I can't find any evidence as to the decision, excuse me, as to the decisions that have been made around that. Yeah, so that's just the front page of our reports anyway. They are lengthy, and we do include all of the elements that I've talked about. So we include that when the nutrition and swallowing checklist was last completed and what the risks were. It also then gives us a way to go back to the key worker and the coordinator and say, well, these are the risks that were identified at the time of the assessment, but through the assessment I noticed X, Y and Z, which weren't actually labelled as risks on the nutrition and swallowing risk checklist, but they are in fact, so let's redo it together at this point in time. And again, our mealtime management plans have been a continual process of growth and construction along the way, and I must say that the new mealtime management plan that's come out through ADAC is excellent and really much more comprehensive. We've had very good feedback about our mealtime management plans and the level of information that's in it, which is very similar, and in fact we have tweaked it with the new ADAC template that's come out as well to improve our own mealtime management plan. But again, I think back to, well, if we don't provide that level of detail for people, then we're doing a disservice to the staff as well. So not only is it putting the client at risk if we don't give enough information, but it's also not fair on the staff. And if we go back and talk to the staff about the things that they can improve on, if we haven't actually documented it and that these are the exact support requirements that this person needs, then it's not really fair to go back and say, you're not doing it right. Now, I'm sure this is not new to anyone because I was doing these when I was in the department. But we've kind of worked a little bit more on these as well recently and really talked with different providers that we're working with around how this mealtime summary might work and where it fits within someone's documentation. And different people want to use it, or different services want to use it in different ways. So some services, and the actual implementation of this, I must say, is variable as well. So I'm not pretending that everybody uses it perfectly, but I think the conversations are starting to happen where services are saying, oh yes, we'd like to use that to set them out on the table and double check, like a medication check. So we're checking we've got the right equipment, we're checking we've got the right consistency, we're checking it's the right person, we're checking safety requirements. And I guess in one of the contexts that I'm working with, I'm doing this with a dietitian as well. So that section around dietary needs has also been really helpful just to double check that, because that's something that often gets missed. People are reasonably good on the textures, but often don't always think about the dietary needs. We've got other services who like to use them as placemats as well, or talk about liking to use them as placemats. And I think it's just continually bringing it up and talking about it when we're out there and seeing it in practice and demonstrating and modelling it in practice that's going to help. So in terms of mealtime review, I guess I've been doing a lot of them recently, and I've had lots of situations where somebody's mealtime plan, or people in fact have got two mealtime plans in their file, one old, one new, or some undated. And so again, it's difficult for me to work out who's done what, who's made what decisions, and where do I go from here. So every time we review someone, even if we don't make any changes, excuse me, to their mealtime management plan, we're writing a review summary or a review letter to say that we've seen this person and that either the mealtime management plan remains current and appropriate and continue to use it, or we've made these changes or these additions so that we can keep a track of what we're doing with people.